Ladies and gentlemen, third straight video in the building, man. It's your boy Lewis with another one. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday once again. If you're watching football, if you're a Texans fan or a Lions fan, hopefully one of your teams pull it out, man. Salute to you guys. Wanted to do this video because I felt like it's something that LeBron fanboys have tried to get away with for so long. But yet they never really seem to answer the question or do their research. They think they do, and they hate Jordan so much, even if they've never seen him play. They've called him Jord Bum, or that's probably the biggest one that I've seen. Or Jord Gambler, that's another one. But they always like to talk about his competition and how his competition is very weak and how the Bulls dominated because they always had the best team and they always had the best players. Okay. Answer this question. During the Bulls' 6 championships that they won, let me break down how many times the Bulls were in 6 to 7 game series during Michael Jordan's championship years from 91 to 98. Okay, let's take a look at 1991. We're going to start there. Now, the Bulls went 15-2 in those playoffs. They swept the Knicks. The Knicks were not as good as they were the following year. But the next series, they beat Philadelphia 4-1. And I think in the Eastern Conference Finals, they surprisingly swept the Detroit Pistons. I thought the Bulls were going to win the series because I felt like they were more ready. I was looking at maybe 6 games, but I wasn't thinking a 4-game sweep. But they mentally took Detroit out of that series, even though a conspiracy theory were like, well, they just let Jordan win and the Pistons were pretty much done and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, and then they beat the Lakers 4-1 when the Lakers were the favorites in that series. The Bulls were actually underdogs, but according to Vegas and the fanboys, it's but the Bulls were favored, and I was like, they were underdogs, and Michael Jordan didn't want to face them just because of the experience they had. He would have rather faced the Portland Trailblazers. But guess what? Jordan still went out and defended Magic Johnson, even though Scottie Pippen took some time guarding him too. But Jordan primarily guarded him the entire series, and then they won in 5, so 15-2. Now let's take a look at 1992. In 92, the Bulls went 15-7. In the first round, they swept the Heat. Mind you, that was the Heat's first ever playoff appearance. But let's look at round 2. Y'all remember when I said in 91 they swept the New York Knicks? Well, it was a different team going into the 92 seasons. They had a rookie in Anthony Mason, 6th man. They had gotten Greg Anthony in the draft. John Starks' role started to be more prominent. Obviously, you had Mark Jackson. You also had Xavier McDaniel. And you had Gerald Wilkins. And obviously, you had Patrick Ewing and Charles Oakley. And I think Kiki Vandeweghe came off the bench. And I think Kiki probably retired in probably 92, I think, if not 93, I don't know. But they won 7 games with the Bulls when the Bulls were the favorites going into that series. Remember, they kept saying the Bulls had this all-time talent, and they won 7 games with the New York Knicks unexpectedly because people didn't think that the Bulls were going to go 7 with the Knicks, but it was because the Knicks had a very rugged physical style. Their physical defense took its toll on the Bulls. And that was a 51-win Knicks team that went on to be even better the following season. But again, we'll get into that. The next round, they played the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that many people dub as probably the next best team to come up with Detroit and Boston because of the talent that they had on that team. A young Ron Harper, you had Larry Nance, you had Brad Daugherty, who was the Tim Duncan of his time. You had Mark Price, who for about 2 or 3 years was one of the better point guards in the league. A better, more efficient Damian Lillard is what I like to call Mark Price. You had Hot Rod Williams. I mean, that was a very talented Cleveland team, obviously with Craig Elo too. But that was a very talented Cleveland team that took the Bulls to 6 games, and it was the healthiest Cleveland team that they had other than their 89 team. And that team won 57 games and took the Bulls to 6. And the way Cleveland played that series, it looked like it was going to go 7 games. But then they get rid of the Cavaliers. And then in the final round, they play a deep, talented Portland Trail Blazers team. Clyde Drexler. You had Terry Porter, who was killing it in the 92 playoffs. Killing it. You had Jerome Kersey, Cliff Robinson, Uncle Cliffy, as they used to call him, who's come off the bench. They had Buck Williams, veteran Buck Williams. You had Kevin Duckworth. You had Danny Ainge coming off the bench. It was a deep Blazer team, talented Blazer team. That series should have won 7 games too. But it was a 6-game series. And the Bulls beat them in 6. And people forget that the Blazers had a 17-point lead in Game 6 in the 3rd quarter. People act like if the Bulls were just sweeping these teams, or gentlemen sweeping these teams, they were playing some hard-fought series in 92. They went 3 straight grueling rounds in 92. Now let's look at 93, when the Bulls were not the number 1 seed. And mind you, the Bulls won 61 games in 91, best record in the East, and then 67 games, best record in the league in 92. Not having as much of a talented team. They played together and played as a team, with Michael being the forefront and obviously Scottie becoming his perfect complement and all-star. But you look at 93. First round, they sweep the Atlanta Hawks. Second round, they sweep the Cavaliers, even though Game 4 was probably the most competitive game in the series, to be quite frank with you. But then let's go to the Eastern Conference Finals. They go up against the number 1 seed in the New York Knicks. Now, mind you, Jordan and Pippen have gone to the Olympics that summer in 92 after winning the championship, and then they won the gold medal, and the season started so soon for them because they had to quickly go to training camp. So they didn't really have time to rest. So they coasted through the season. They coasted, and they won 57 games, which was good enough for the 3rd best record in the league. The Knicks go up 2-0 on them, on a team that won 60 games that year. And they had John Starks and obviously Anthony Mason, and they had Hubert Davis and Mace, and they had Charles Smith, who they got in a trade. They had Doc Rivers, they had Rolando Blackman, and obviously Pat at the helm. You still got Charles Oakley. The Knicks went up 2-0. And people thought the series was over, including the Knicks. The Bulls came back and won 4 straight. And everybody remembers, obviously, the 54-point game by Jordan, but everybody also remembers that pivotal Game 5. That if the Knicks win, they go 7. And mind you, the Knicks had home court advantage, so the Bulls started that series on the road. And then you go to the NBA Finals. They go up against Charles Barkley, who's the MVP, and the team that won 62 regular season games, best record in the NBA. Bulls have to go on the road. And I know Phoenix was a very flawed home team in that postseason. They lost a lot of home games. But my point is, they beat Phoenix in 6 in a very competitive 6-game series. Now, mind you, they lost Game 2 by 3. They won in triple overtime in Game 2. They won by 3. In Game 3, they won in triple overtime, 129-121. In Game 4, they came within 2 until Michael's famous 3-point play on Charles Barkley in Game 4. They win Game 5. And Game 6, they were up 4 with just a little over a minute to go. And the Suns blew the lead. They choked when it mattered, and the Bulls won the championship. And the thing is, the Bulls were facing a Game 7 in both 1992 in Game 6 and 1993 in Game 6. Now we're not going to count 1994 because Michael had retired and he had left to go play baseball. Let's go to 1995. Jordan comes back for the last 17 games of the season. Bulls go 13-4. They lose Horace Grant in the offseason and he's with the Orlando Magic. They beat Charlotte in the first round 3-1. This is Michael having a baseball body. No excuses. No excuses. Michael lost. Averaged what? 32 points a game, shot 48%. But let's face it, his percentages looked better against the Hornets than it really did against the Orlando Magic. A competitive 6-game series that Michael Jordan ends up losing to Orlando, which is the team that goes to the NBA Finals that same season, and then they get swept by Dreams Rockets. Then take a look at 1996. Competitive 5-game series. Well, they swept the Heat. Competitive 5-game series against the Knicks. Sweep the Eastern Conference Finals of the Magic just because that was revenge. The Bulls had a new roster with the exception of Jordan, Pippen, and Phil Jackson. Totally different team. And then they go 6 games with Seattle, even though to me that series was over after Game 3, which it ended up being. But Seattle was able to get 2 games. And Game 6 happened to be on Father's Day. And the Bulls win in 6. And then you look at the Utah Jazz. And then let's go to 97. A competitive 3-game series against the Bullets. It was looking like the series against the Hawks was going to go 6 games. It goes 5. People were hyped about the Eastern Conference Finals possibly being the Knicks against the Bulls with a much better Knicks team because they had won 57 games. But what happened? The suspension to those key players with the Charlie Ward, PJ Brown fight in Game 5, in which they went into the stands. And those key players got suspended. The Bulls disposed of the Heat in 5 games when people predicted that the Heat were probably going to give them a run for their money. And they only got 1 game off of them. And then you got the Utah Jazz. Take a look, watch those 97 finals, and you'll realize how close that series was. The only real blowout was in Game 3. The game was close in Game 1. Game 2, the Bulls pulled away late. Game 3, the Jazz blew them out. Game 4 was very competitive, and then you got the famous Game 5, the flu game, in which Jordan hit that big 3 to seal it. And then you got Game 6. Scottie Pippen with the steal heard around the world with the Bulls up by 2. When Steve Kerr hits that big jumper in Game 6, and remember that Jordan hit the game-winning jumper in Game 1. When Malone misses the free throws, when Scottie Pippen whispers in his ear, the mailman don't deliver on Sundays. And then you take a look at 1998. They sweep the Nets when the Nets gave them hell in Game 1. If y'all remember that game went to overtime. You look at the second round against the Charlotte Hornets and how the Hornets won Game 2 on their home floor, but then the Bulls were able to rebound and then get it together and win the last 3 games because Charlotte was mentally just not at their level. But now you go to the Eastern Conference Finals and you look at the Indiana Pacers, a team that was knocking on the door in 94 and 95. They made an unexpected Eastern Conference Finals run in 94, and then they proved it to be no fluke by going back in 95. Despite the fact that it was Reggie Miller as their best player, the Pacers had a really good team in the mid-90s. And they meet in the Eastern Conference Finals. They were just more older. But they take the Bulls to 7 games. And it looked like the Bulls were in jeopardy of finally getting dethroned and we were going to have a new NBA champion. But the Bulls said not so fast. Right? And mind you, let me just go back to Utah Jazz really quick in 97. That was a team that won 64 games. The Miami Heat in 97 won 61 games. And the Hawks won 56 games. And then let me just backtrack back to 96 where the Magic won 60 games. The Knicks were a 47-win team, but that in itself was due to Don Nelson and him taking over as coach for Pat Riley. That's a whole nother story. And then the Sonics winning 64 games, and they had the best record in the Western Conference in 96. They were 38-3 at the Key Arena at home. But getting back to 1998, and obviously with the Jazz winning 64 games, best record in team history. And then you look at 98 with the Eastern Conference Finals, 58-win Pacer team, 51-win Charlotte Hornets team. They won 7 games, and it looked like the Pacers were going to dethrone them, and the Bulls found the way to win, the will to win. And then you go to the NBA Finals, where the media questioned that the Bulls looked tired, and it might be over the hill, and it looks like their time is up. Just like the Jazz in Game 6 almost going to Game 7, guess what? The Utah Jazz take the Bulls to 6 games. And if you guys remember, the Lakers, who they played twice that year, the Lakers lost the first game at the United Center, and then the Lakers blew them out at the Great Western Forum. And people were like, they saw young Kobe, they saw young Shaq. People thought, well, the Lakers, as deep and talented as they are, they're gonna definitely play the Bulls in the finals. And the Jazz swept them because of how mentally weak the Lakers were. That same Utah Jazz team took the Bulls 6 games again, and they had a 3-point lead going into Game 6. And this is a team that had lost by 42 points in Game 3. John Stockton hit the 3 heard around the world that put him up 3. And what does Jordan do? Goes down the court, quickly scores a layup. It was giving me 1993 vibes all over again against the Phoenix Suns. Karl Malone gets the ball. Jordan comes from the weak side to strip the ball, and Malone never sees him. That's how a lot of Malone's turnovers tended to happen. Comes down the court, 17 seconds left. You know, Bob Costas with the call, Jordan with the crossover, and people still say that it was an offensive foul when it was not. Russell's momentum was playing for the drive, and Jordan was able to sell it with the crossover, and that's why Russell slips, even though Isaiah says he's clearly pushing, but that's Isaiah bitterness talking. Anyway, and then Jordan seals the championship with that shot. And I know this is a longer video, but that almost went to Game 7, which is telling you that Jordan had competition. If the Bulls were blowing teams out of the water, why were they in so many grueling series in the 90s? And then let's take Jordan off of the record for a second. Back in 94, the Bulls won 7 games with the New York Knicks, and that was without Michael Jordan. And keep in mind that they had players from the first three-peat and the players that would be key contributors to the second three-peat. Steve Kerr, Luke Longley, Tony Kukoc. So the bottom line is, I get sick and tired of people saying that Jordan didn't have no competition, but I just dispelled the facts in this video literally right here, that Jordan did have competition. And they're some of the greatest players to ever play. And think about this. What does history look for guys like Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Reggie Miller, John Stockton and Karl Malone, Clyde Drexler? What happens to Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp? What does that do for their legacies had they have beaten the greatest player to ever play the game? What does it do for their legacies? People got to really think about how important that 6-0 is. Because if any one of those guys put a blemish in Jordan's finals record, what does that do for their legacy? They're great players, all-stars, most of them Hall of Famers, but what does it do to their legacy if one of them could say, I beat you on the biggest stage that there is in the NBA? Or I knocked you off and not allowed you to get to the championship, and I'm holding your title that you feel is rightfully yours. And I'm looking at guys like Patrick Ewing and Reggie Miller. Something to think about, folks. So yeah, Jordan had competition. But ladies and gentlemen, this is your boy Louis with another one. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section, man. As always, man. Do you guys agree with what I said about Jordan in this competition? Let me know what you guys think. Bless up, live, laugh, love. Thank you guys for watching.